Just another beautiful 90-degree day in mid-September here in Birmingham, Alabama, the football capital of the South, once and forever. We've got some big games this weekend involving state teams, SEC teams. None bigger than what's going to happen in Norman, Oklahoma on Saturday afternoon on ABC, the prime afternoon slot. Number 22, Auburn, at number 11, Oklahoma. And I am going to violate one of my cherished principles about what is and what isn't a must-win game. It's rare to have those in August or September. I think I declared the Baylor game a must-win game for Auburn. And they did win to get off to a very encouraging start. And because they are 3-0 and ranked for the first time since 2021, and because Oklahoma is 3-0 and ranked number 11, and because there are so many backstories here, you could write a book about this individual game. This does qualify as much as a September game can as a must-win for Auburn. Will they? Well, we're going to break it down. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. This is Scarbo Knows. Thank you for checking us out and following along for the ride. Thank you to Brendan Martin, our executive producer on the Sidelines.live network. And a special shout out to our sponsor, Money Management Services, Birmingham's family-owned, fee-only financial services firm. The Rice family, good friends of mine. They will take great care of you. We'll hear from them a little bit later in the show. So let's dive into this Oklahoma-Auburn game. Auburn has never beaten Oklahoma. But let's put an asterisk by that. They've only played 3 times, a couple of times in bowl games. And they played last year in Oklahoma's inaugural season in the Southeastern Conference in Jordan-Hare Stadium. So many things happened that afternoon. It did not go well for the Tigers. They had a nice lead. Oklahoma stormed from behind. Jackson Arnold got benched as the Oklahoma quarterback. Michael Hawkins Jr., a true freshman, came on to lead the Sooners to that victory. And it was just another in a disappointing series of afternoons for Auburn in Hugh Freeze's first 2 seasons. But everything was pointing to this year. This game, Auburn, Oklahoma, Hugh Freeze, Brent Venables. We're going to talk a little bit about the backstory. But let's look at what Auburn has done and hasn't done when it has faced Brent Venables, because last year was not their first meeting. It was the first time Venables faced the Tigers as a head coach, but he had plenty of experience against Auburn as the defensive coordinator at Clemson, as Dabo Swinney was building that program into a national power. Brent Venables is undefeated against Auburn as a coordinator and as a head coach. There you see the 3 meetings when he was at Clemson, and then last year's game, OU over the Tigers. Now, note the scores on the Auburn side. They haven't scored more than 21 points against the Brent Venables defense so far, and Brent Venables is one of the better defensive minds in college football. Look at those numbers. I got those from the Oklahoma game notes for this week. Look at the numbers of what the Auburn offenses have done, haven't done against Brent Venables defenses. Averaging a tick under 15 points a game and a few yards over 300 a game. Brent Venables defenses have sacked Auburn quarterbacks 21 times in 4 meetings and collected 45 tackles for loss. Now, I'm not a math major. My younger son, Cannon, is the rocket scientist in the family. However, 45 divided by 4 It's about 11 tackles for loss a game on average. Not good, Bob, unless you're Bob Stoops. So that is going to be the key matchup in this game, I think, the Auburn offense against the Oklahoma defense. Can Auburn score enough points? Because I fully believe Oklahoma is going to score enough points. And the real backstory here, of course, is before Auburn hired Hugh Freeze, a couple of years before, Auburn had a chance to hire Brent Venables. This was after Auburn had fired Gus Malzahn after the 2020 COVID season. It was time for a change. I've never argued that point. As many good things as Gus has done since, the highlights he's put up, especially that opening win over Alabama in his new position as the offensive coordinator at Florida State, it was the right time for Gus Malzahn and Auburn to part company. Nothing that happens going forward will change that fact. Gus had been at Auburn for 8 years, and we'll see some numbers in a moment that will help reinforce that position that Gus's time at Auburn needed to come to an end. The question became, who would they hire? And Brent Venables was one of the coaches on their list that they talked to, that they considered. But Brent Venables said no. He decided to stay at Clemson. And a year later, when the Oklahoma job came open, Brent Venables saw a better opportunity in Norman than he had envisioned at Auburn. So yes, it wasn't the same coaching cycle, but Brent Venables, in essence, chose Oklahoma over Auburn. And the main reason he did, and this was interesting, during his introductory press conference at Oklahoma, he was asked about his flirtation with Auburn the year before. And he said he was nervous. He was not confident in the alignment at Auburn. And that was when the word alignment was becoming a buzzword in coaching circles. Do you have support from the president, the AD, the board of trustees, key boosters? That's very important to head coaches, as it should be. And as anyone who's familiar with Auburn for any length of time knows, that has been an issue at Auburn at times. Too much meddling, too many cooks in the kitchen, too little power and authority vested in the head coach, too much in particular boosters. It's not out of the realm of, not out of the norm for college football, but Auburn seems to get hammered with that accusation more than other programs. I'm not sure why that is. But they do. They own some of it. Sometimes it's overblown. So Brent Venables wanted no part of that. And a year later, he becomes the Oklahoma head coach. And 2 years later, when the Brian Harsin experiment inevitably failed, Auburn went back to a familiar face. It hired someone it knew who had SEC experience in Hugh Freeze. So this game is a referendum in many ways on the head coaching decisions by Brent Venables and Auburn. Auburn was interested. I don't know that they would have hired Venables if he had been just as interested in them or more interested in them. We'll never know that for sure, given the people that were doing the hiring at the time, and no need dredging up those skeletons. It's amazing that the athletic director at Auburn then is an athletic director in the Football Bowl subdivision today, despite all his missteps on the plains. Again, another story for another day. But this game is going to tell us a lot because Brent Venables is in his 4th year at Oklahoma. Hugh Freeze is in his 3rd year at Auburn. Each has had time to put his program in place, his staff, his roster, his way of doing things, his culture. So there are no excuses, no blaming the previous head coach for either guy. Yeah, Venables has a year more on the job than Freeze does. But you've had plenty of time, if you're Hugh Freeze, to put together your program. And you've made coaching changes, and so is Brent Venables. Now, one of the things that Hugh Freeze is trying to change and get Auburn out of this rut that it's been stuck in for 4 straight losing seasons, and really towards the end of the Gus Malzahn era, is the way Auburn performs on the road against ranked opponents. These numbers, well, they may shock you. Let's look at how Auburn has performed and has underperformed in road games against ranked teams. I went all the way back. I compiled these numbers for every Auburn head coach going back to Pat Dye. Now, you don't expect necessarily to have a winning record on the road against ranked teams, unless maybe you're Alabama under Nick Saban. I did some other calculations, did some other figuring, and since 2013, and I started with the Gus Malzahn era to compare them to other SEC programs, Alabama 15-7 against ranked teams on the road. True road games, not neutral site games, not bowl games, not playoff games, not BCS championship games, but true road games in the other team's stadium. Alabama 15-7 since 2013. Georgia 9-9, the next best record in the league. And of course, that covers the end of the Mark Richt era and the arrival of Kirby Smart. Florida has I think Florida has the worst record in the league. Certainly the worst among the traditional six powers in the SEC. And that would be Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, LSU, and Tennessee. The old standbys, the teams that have won all the conference championships, going back to forever and ever since Ole Miss, in the early 60s. One of those six programs has won the SEC every year, and they have collected national championships as well. Since 2013, Florida is 2-18 in this situation on the road against a ranked team. But look at Auburn's resume. 8 straight losses in this spot. The last time Auburn won a road game against a ranked team, Brian Harsin was the coach in 2021. It was at Arkansas. Arkansas was ranked number 17 at the time. Not an overly significant accomplishment, but it mattered. And 2 games later, the Harsin era started to go terribly, horribly wrong. And they started to lose and lose and lose some more on and off the field. Auburn has lost 13 of its last 14 games in this spot on the road against a ranked team. The last time they beat a team ranked as high as number 11, or within the top 11, I should say, that's where Oklahoma sits today in the AP poll, was 2014. And Hugh Freeze remembers it well because he was the head coach at Ole Miss. And Auburn was playing in Oxford. And it was a terrific football game. If you were there, a night game, incredible atmosphere at Vaught-Hemingway. 2 teams that were both in the playoff discussion in the first year of the 14 playoff in 2014. Auburn had 1 loss to Mississippi State. Ole Miss had 1 loss to LSU. Ole Miss had beaten Alabama that year in the Grove with College Game Day in town. Katy Perry and corn dogs and all the craziness that happened that day. But that Auburn-Ole Miss game was a classic. And Ole Miss was driving to score the winning touchdown, if you recall, at the end, and what happened. And just an amazing tackle. It was clean. It was a hard hit. It was a freak injury to Laquan Treadwell. He ended up suffering a broken leg, fumbling the ball near the goal line. Auburn walked away with a win, 35-31. That's the last time Auburn has beaten a team on the road that was ranked in the top 11. That's what they're going to have to do Saturday. Now, look at the other coaches. Again, this is really instructive to me. Freeze is 0-4 at Auburn in this spot. He's one of only 4 SEC coaches in their current jobs who has yet to win a road game against a ranked team. Billy Napier is at the bottom of that list. He's 0-8. Brent Venables is 0-1, but you have to put an asterisk by that because the Oklahoma-Texas game is a neutral site game. So you can't count that in these calculations. So he's 0-1 in these situations. Jeff Lebby from Mississippi State is 0-4. And I think that's it. Those are the 4 that have never, at their current jobs, and again, Lebby's in his second year. These guys are all fairly new, although Napier's been around the longest, but he's 0-8. He has yet to win a road game against a ranked team. He's going to try to do that on Saturday at Miami. Good luck with that to the Gators. So, Hugh Freeze is trying to change the culture at Auburn. He's trying to get them out of this rut. He's trying to lift them out of these long negative streaks that they're stuck in. And it's not going to be easy because the second major subplot of this game beyond the fact that Brent Venables, in a different world, woulda, coulda, shoulda been the Auburn coach. And that position wouldn't have been available for Hugh Freeze. And who else in the SEC would have given Hugh Freeze a chance if Auburn wasn't available? We'll never know. But there's a more intriguing matchup in terms of what's going to decide who wins this game, or who's going to decide the winner of this game, and it's the quarterback position. It's a quarterback game. Football, college football, is a quarterback game. This is a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star quarterback game, because how these two quarterbacks perform is going to really tell the tale of who's smiling at the end of the day on Saturday. So let's look at the quarterback comparison. We all know Jackson Arnold, of course, was at Oklahoma for 2 years. Was the starter last year, lost his job. All kinds of problems around him, injuries, inaccuracy, inefficiency, disconnect with the coaching staff, coaching changes during the year on the offensive side of the ball. I don't care if you're Tom Brady, you would have struggled in that situation, or you wouldn't have been at your best in that situation. Let's just put it that way. So we're giving Jackson Arnold not a full pass on last season, but we understand why he was not the hotshot, high-profile recruit he was coming out of high school in his first year as a full-time starter at OU. Now, in December, though, the writing was on the wall. Jackson Arnold understood Oklahoma had hired a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterbacks coach, and coincidentally, they both came from Washington State, where John Mateer had burst onto the scene last year as one of the better quarterbacks in college football, and he was in the transfer portal. So on December 14th, Jackson Arnold signed with Auburn. He saw it coming. He went in the transfer portal quickly. He knew what was coming. And Brent Venables can say all the nice things in the world about Jackson Arnold. Maybe he's sincere about all of them. But in essence, he chose John Mateer over Jackson Arnold. And Jackson Arnold needed a new home, and he found it at Auburn. So this game's going to tell us, was Jackson Arnold and were Jackson Arnold and Hugh Freeze right about Jackson Arnold? Or was Brent Venables right? And was he not the best choice to be the Sooners starting quarterback in 2025? And that's why they went out and got John Mateer. The numbers that concern me here, that stand out here, are the passing yards per game. Auburn has been so run heavy, including incorporating Jackson Arnold into the run game, and he's been a true dual threat quarterback. He's been very effective at making decisions on the RPOs, when to take off on passing plays, when the running lanes open up like the Red Sea, as they did against Baylor when he ran for 137. He's looked really good in his decision-making. The downfield passing game has not been there yet. He's only throwing for 167 yards a game. Meanwhile, John Mateer leads the SEC. He's throwing for almost 315 a game. And Mateer is that same, he's in that same mold of Oklahoma quarterbacks. That gunslinger. Let's go make a play. Damn the torpedoes. Tight window, let's fit it in there. Same as Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. I'm not saying he's those guys. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman, but all of a sudden, he has risen in the discussion because, as we talked about the other day, some of the favorites, some of the guys that you expected to be the best quarterbacks in the SEC and around college football, Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, DJ Lagway, have vastly underperformed to this point in the young season. Meanwhile, guys like Mateer have stepped up. Jackson Arnold has stepped up. He's been a positive addition for Auburn. You cannot argue that. But is he John Mateer? And can he outduel John Mateer? That remains to be seen. Because Auburn's pass defense. Ugh. Auburn is ranked, let me look this up. Let me make sure I get this right. Auburn's pass defense is number 14 in the SEC. 14. It's 2 from the bottom. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's passing offense is 6th in the conference, and Mateer leads in passing yards per game. So that is a strength-weakness dichotomy that does not figure to go well for Auburn unless they can put pressure on John Mateer, unless they can force him into some of those crucial mistakes that a quarterback with his mindset will tend to make. He's got a couple of interceptions this year. Jackson Arnold does not. Jackson Arnold has yet to throw an interception. That's a testament, again, to his decision-making. But I don't think there's a lot to choose between these teams. I don't think there's a significant difference between these teams. I'm concerned about the Auburn defense. Concerned particularly, as I said, about the pass defense. They gave up 1 million yards to Baylor. Now, Baylor's a very good passing offense, as they showed in going to SMU and winning the following week after losing to Auburn. But John Mateer, if Auburn is not crisp in its calls, if they don't communicate well in front of that hostile crowd, if they bust assignments, John Mateer and those Oklahoma receivers, a much better receiver room than Jackson Arnold had last year in Norman because so many of those guys got hurt, the Sooners will take advantage. They took advantage of Auburn's pass defense last year. Michael Hawkins Jr., the true freshman, hit a deep ball, a critical deep ball as part of that comeback in Jordan-Hare Stadium. John Mateer is a mature, experienced, intelligent quarterback who knows where the defense's holes are. So does Ben Arbuckle, his offensive coordinator. And the alignment, the word Brent Venables used, that he didn't see at Auburn among the leadership there, why he declined to go further in the process back in December of 2020, that alignment is there for Oklahoma's offense. Ben Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback's coach, whose name I cannot pronounce, John, we'll call him John K. I don't want to insult him by mispronouncing his last name, having had my name mispronounced once or twice through the years. Those guys are on the same page. They worked together with John Mateer last year. They came as a package. It reminds a lot of people of what Vanderbilt did, what Clark Lee did in bringing in the Diego Pavia team from New Mexico State. And look how well that's turned out. All of a sudden, Vanderbilt is ranked. All of a sudden, Vanderbilt looks even more dangerous than it did last year. And in the early competition for SEC Quarterback of the Year, Diego Pavia is on the short list. John Mateer is on the short list. Ty Simpson from Alabama is on the short list. Marcel Reed from Texas A&M is there. Talon Green from Arkansas. And Jackson Arnold, I think, is a little bit below those guys so far, but he can really take a step forward in this game. He has declined some interview requests this week, I've noticed. I don't know if that means he's especially focused, if he's putting too much pressure on this game. It's an interesting phenomenon. And I used to have this discussion with the legendary Auburn coach Pat Dye back in the day. You know, Pat normally would allow practices to be open to the media. Now, there weren't as many media members then covering these teams as there are now. But when he meant open, it was open. I could walk out there and did most days when practice began, and I could stay till practice ended, because that's what you had to do if you wanted to talk to Pat Dye about how practice had gone. You had to be there at the end of practice. But I would watch practice. I didn't necessarily know and understand everything I was watching. I saw some incredibly emotional moments. But you got a sense of how the coaches felt about how things were going, how hard they were working, the players, how unhappy they were the way certain things were going on the practice field. But Pat Dye would change. He would do that most weeks. But some weeks, he would close practice before the Iron Bowl, for example. Maybe the Georgia week, maybe some other weeks. And I used to say to him, you didn't realize, Pat, everybody knows this is a big game. You are ramping up the internal heat with your players by changing your process. If your process for 8 or 9 games of the year is to have practice open and to have a small handful of us as reporters watching, but for select games, you close practice, you change the routine, you alter the process. You're sending a subliminal message to your players. You say every game means the same. You want your guys to be at a peak as often as possible. But you're telling them, hey, this game matters more. I wonder if Jackson Arnold is going to play fast and free on Saturday, if he's going to have the weight of the world on his shoulders, if he's going to stay confident if something goes wrong. He suffers a strip sack early. He throws a pick six. He's been really good so far, and he was tested at Baylor. He had to perform at Baylor because Baylor, with their passing offense and Sawyer Robertson, kept scoring on the Auburn defense. Auburn couldn't let up, and Jackson Arnold was on it that day. He hasn't had to be as good since against Ball State and South Alabama, and he hasn't quite been. But he's still making good decisions. This is the game where the Auburn wide receiver room, the Freeze 4, the Freeze 5, whatever you want to call them, throw in Eric Singleton now, the incredible transfer. We'll see how healthy he is on Saturday. I don't think there's any doubt he's going to play. He was on the availability report. I forget what designation he was under, but I expect that he will play. But those guys have got to step up. We know what Cam Coleman can do. He made one of the best catches last week. Because it was against South Alabama, it didn't get as much play nationally. But he was one-on-one, down the field, deep ball, DB in his face, DB interfering with him, grabbing him, pushing him, and Cam Coleman just went up and caught the ball and showed what he's capable of while backpedaling into the end zone, ended up with a touchdown. So those guys, Malcolm Simmons is expected to be back. The whole group is, on paper, maybe as good as any wide receiver room in the country, or at least on the short list. But they haven't quite put it all together. I think this is the game they'll have to. I think Oklahoma will gear up to shut down Auburn's running game or slow it down, which has been so good. Damari Austin should be back, which is a positive for Auburn. We know what he's done. So Jackson Arnold's going to have to throw the ball. He's going to have to be effective in the passing game. Does he have to throw for 250 to win? I don't know. 300? Probably not. You can't throw for $125. You can't rely only on Jackson Arnold's legs in this game. So, Mr. Sip, I am not giving out betting advice. Let me just say this before I tell you who I think is going to win. I don't do betting advice. I don't do lines. I don't do Vegas. I'm probably the only person, I probably shouldn't, as Sonny Smith once you like to say, I don't believe I'd have told that, but I'm going to tell that anyway. I went to Vegas once to cover Auburn basketball. This was back in the late 80s against UNLV, the Running Rebels, Tark the Shark. They played a home-and-home series. I went out when they came to Auburn. I got to go out to dinner with the UNLV traveling party, and we went to an Italian restaurant, a well-known Italian restaurant in Auburn at the time, and I felt like I was in a scene from The Godfather, and Tark was Marlon Brando. So I go to Vegas then for the return game the next year, covering Auburn as the beat writer for the Birmingham News, and I didn't put a single nickel in a single slot machine the time I was there. I was only there for a few days, but that's not my thing. So I just want to make that clear, Mr. Sip, and everyone else. I am not giving gambling advice or betting advice. Consult the professionals in that regard. But I do have a lean. I have a strong lean on what I think is going to happen Saturday in Norman, Oklahoma. Drum roll, please, Maestro. What does the prediction say? Survey says Oklahoma 31, Auburn 24. Aubie, why are you looking at me like that? Don't look at me like that. It's a feel. It's a vibe. It's from studying stats, knowing the backstories, knowing what's at stake, knowing that Auburn has not been at its best for a long time in this kind of spot. Auburn's better than it's been in years. I don't think it's quite there to win this kind of game because I think Oklahoma is better than it's been in years. We'll find out Saturday. That's why they play the games. I can't wait. I am geared up. I'm going to have the popcorn ready. I'm going to have the big green egg already fired up for halftime to grill those burgers, and it's going to be a great day. I hope you have a great day. I hope you count down the hours and enjoy every one of them between now and Saturday at 2:30 Central Time. Thanks for watching Scarbo Knows. I'm Kevin Scarbinsky. Thank you to Brendan Martin, our executive producer on the Sidelines.live network. Check out all the great shows here. And check out my friends at Money Management Services. Have a great day, everyone. See you.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors. Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.